You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast. Hey, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this podcast and give it a thumbs up if it's deserving. It helps me a lot. Anyway, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. And as you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Sylva is on the show today. She's got a can-do attitude and says she goes through life expecting good things and good things come her way. Reminds me of that mantra, whatever you believe, you're correct. She checked off a bucket list item, which was to ride her bicycle across the U.S., and she did it solo. She took along a computer and kept track of her epic adventure, and then when she got back, she wrote a book to document it, but also to inspire and empower others. Here's her story. All right, well, on the show today, we have Sylva. Hey, Sylva.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Well, this is pretty cool because you are literally in Italy while we are recording, and I am in the U.S. in Iowa. So it's kind of a fun, I don't think I've ever done that with a different country, and you're there and I'm here.
And there's sunlight shining in your windows, and here it's just dark.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have never been to Italy, so I am curious to see what it's like there. But anyway, the reason that you're on the show is I found you, or you found me. We found each other somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking through some of your social media, and you actually did a solo bike adventure across the United States, which I'm really curious about. And I've had a lot of guests on who talk about that experience. And so that's why you're here. But then on top of it, you actually wrote a book about it. Is that true?
I did, yes. While riding the bicycle across the country, I wrote the first draft anyways.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I totally want to get into that. But let's start out by telling the listeners where you are now, which we already, secret. We already know you're in Italy. But tell us a little bit more about that and what cycling is like there.
So I live outside of Bologna, which is in north central Italy, and in a small town called Faenza. Not Firenze, but pretty close to Firenze. And actually, the biking culture here is marvelous because there's some famous cyclists that have come from this area, like Pantani, I think, if I don't mess things up. And the bike culture is very strong. Like, everybody goes out on Sundays in like herds of spandex. It's like the thing to do. Like, even people that don't ride a bicycle hardly at all put on like a very fancy spandex outfit, and they all go ride everywhere, all over the countryside on Sundays and Saturdays too. So it's kind of like a really nice area to be for somebody who likes to ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
Like me.
And what about
and very good hills?
Commuting? Do people commute by bicycle there?
Here they do. This is, I've heard it said, one of the highest population density of bicycles in Italy because it's very flat. And Ferrara, which is kind of 2 hours away-ish, has the highest density, I heard once. But here, yeah, you see everybody flying by. Like, somebody asked me, is this China? Because there's like just people. There's grandma with her groceries. There's this man who washes the windows with his ladder and
on
his
bike?
Bucket. On a bike. It's amazing. He's my favorite.
That's awesome.
He's my favorite.
And did you say you're in a pretty small town? So to have small town plus, hardcore cyclists, that's pretty cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. It's not that small. It's like 70,000 people almost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good size.
And I don't know if it's a long story or a short story, but how did you end up in Italy?
It's always connected to bikes.
Yeah.
So, yes, I started in 2009. I started working for a bicycle tour company called Experience Plus. And I'm still a tour leader for them, although obviously this year we had 0 season. But I started working for them in 2009, and coming and going with my now ex-husband, who is a bike mechanic, and I did everything, like everything, and I still guide for them.
Nice, nice. Well, let's crossing our fingers that in 2021, things will get closer to normal.
Yeah, we all are hoping for that, I think,
Yeah.
to whatever our normal is.
Right. Well, that kind of segues into bike touring, and it sounds like part of what you do when you're bike touring has to do with a job. Do you want to get into a little bit about the solo bike adventure that you did across the U.S., like maybe how you decided to do it, when you did it, all those kinds of questions?
Sure, sure. So 2009 is when I started working for this company. And it's also when I discovered bike touring and then quickly became completely obsessed with it. Like, as the coolest way to travel on earth for people that don't mind being in pain a lot of the time that they're traveling.
It's true. And stinky sometimes.
And a lot of stinky, but also like able to eat anything you want.
Yeah, that is very
Period.
true.
So also with my ex-husband, we got really into bike touring. And so we started bike touring like all over Colorado where we were living, and also in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos, all over Europe, because we would come and work for the bike tour company for a bit and then travel on bikes usually and then return home. So luckily, like by the time we had split up, I had all of this experience bike touring, and like I had all the gear and I knew how to accumulate the gear that had failed and what to look for. And I was totally prepared, at least I thought I was, to ride my bicycle across the United States by myself. So I did it from early October of 2017 until February of 2018, mid-February. So 4.5 months.
Wow. And did you hit the mountains when it was snowy?
I was so lucky, also because I was dragging my heels in New Mexico because I find it just a magical state. And I made it over the Continental Divide, and then it snowed, dumped the next day. So I was really lucky.
Oh my gosh. And did you
pure luck
start California, or did you start, or which side of the United States did you start on?
Good question. So I followed what's called the Southern Tier Route, Adventure Cycling Association's route that starts in San Diego, California, and goes until St. Augustine, Florida. But I also added a little bit on because I started in Berkeley, where my brother lives. So I rode down the coast and then across the big left turn.
And do you recall the distance? Like how many miles did you do it?
It was about 6,000, sorry, that's kilometers, 4,000 miles, a little over 4,000 miles.
Wow. And how would you describe like the terrain? I mean, were you typically, when you pick a route that's an established route, like with adventure cycling, I think that they pick a little bit lower traffic and maybe elevation. I'm not sure.
They try for sure to pick roads that are less trafficy. And sometimes, like when you're going through places like Arizona, there are no other roads because the population density is in the basement. So you have to ride on the interstate for a bit. But in general, yeah, they try to pick a quote more scenic route for you. But the scenery and everything changed. Like it went from the Pacific coast through the desert, like desert, lots of desert, into Texas. So into like starting to be hill country around Austin, and then eventually to like swamps and thick forests, things like that. So it was a lot of different changes.
Yeah, you saw a little bit of everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I am also big into bicycle touring, and I am a firm believer in like steel is real. So I've got like a steel bicycle, a gunner, and it's got, like the hub generator on it, so I don't have to worry about lights and all of that good stuff. And then, the funny thing is, you put on your panniers and then you just start putting more and more weight on it. Like I got into bike packing this past year, and it was so refreshing to know that I only have like 2 bags to put my junk in instead of 4 or 5 or 6. So do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your gear setup, or how, were you had lots of weight going, or were you real light wearing one outfit the whole time or something?
I was, I think I was in the middle. I'm not a super, super duper minimalist,
Mm-hmm.
but my front rack had broken not long before I left, and I didn't have time to get it all figured out. So I had rear panniers, and I had a handlebar bag called a sweet roll for my tent and my fuel and some other heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a frame bag that I kept like snacks and wallet and all of that stuff in. But I did carry everything. I had everything to camp. I had also, since it was in the winter, I had warm weather gear. I had a swimsuit. I had like rain stuff. I had everything. Mm-hmm. So light it was not. And I also had a computer so that I could write this book. So this book that I wrote about the trip.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know, it's kind of a bragging thing when you're touring. Like that's a difference for me between bike touring and bike packing. Bike touring, you're basically on the roads. And I mean, you don't bring the kitchen sink with you, but for you, for example, a computer was important to you because you wanted to be able to document for your book. So it's, it's funny. I love the fact that I've done both because, like a sleeping bag, especially if you're going to be cold, like that's not something that you're going to leave at home. I mean, I don't want to just be in my, long pants and a sweatshirt and suffer through a night in the cold.
Yeah, I'm a really bad sufferer of cold, even though I love to be outside like all the time. And I actually really love to ski too, backcountry ski. But the cold is really hard. So I had to bring like warm stuff and a tent.
A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show. And were you mostly camping, or did you do hostels or hotels occasionally?
Good question. For the first month exclusively, I camped. As much as possible, and then as much as I could going forward. But then it started to get cold, and it started to rain and snow, and it snowed in Louisiana. Also, I was trapped in Louisiana for a few days for like 100-year freak snowstorm. So it was interesting. I used Warm Showers, the Warm Showers Network, if anybody's familiar with that. Hospitality based. So I've also, since I've been back here and have my own place now, I've hosted some cyclists coming through Italy, which is super cool and fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I met an incredible amount of really amazing people on the trip through the Warm Showers Network.
And I think it's just warmshowers.org, if I remember right.
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, amazing. So can you get into, because I have more questions about the actual tour, but
Sure.
Did you start the tour knowing you were going to write a book, or did it happen organically?
I'm also a writer, and I studied journalism, and so for me, writing is like, well, now I speak 2 languages, but maybe writing was my first, so maybe 3 in total.
Okay.
So I don't know. Before I left, at some point, I had the idea I should write about this book, and maybe I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Actually, the idea to start with is that I also had a GoFundMe account because the moment when I started the tour in my life was like kind of a crazy one. I had just gotten divorced. I had left Colorado, got rid of all my stuff, and I had no idea what I was going to do next, except for somehow get to Italy. But I didn't have a plan for that either. So I knew that I needed to do this ride, and I didn't really understand why at the beginning. and I didn't necessarily have a lot of money, so I asked for some help, and then I promised everyone that helped me a copy of the book.
Oh, okay.
And that's a promise that I still will definitely uphold,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what is in the book.
So it's the story of the trip, obviously, like from start to finish, but it's also kind of gets into the breakup with my husband and why I felt like I really needed to ride myself across the United States, which ended up being like a very empowering journey. And by the end of it, I had a first draft of a book, and I also planned my move to Italy while riding across the country.
Nice.
So I think without this ride, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So.
And looking at, your day in and day out of, all you had to do was ride your bike and document the day. Any sort of like mishaps that happened along the way?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Anytime you like set off on a bike for a while, things always happen. So, so there was the blizzard in Louisiana, which I think the entire state of Louisiana didn't expect either. And there was a landslide that I had to get around in California. There was a heat wave also in California, like over 100 degrees straight for like days. It was in the Santa Ana wind was blowing, which is a very hot wind. It's even like 90 degrees at night. So, and then there was, let's see, I had a knee problem in Texas. I had to stop for a couple of weeks. I had bike parts break in the middle of nowhere. I had rack parts break in the middle of nowhere. I had to get really creative with lodging too, because in Texas there was a lot of wild dogs also running around. I had to figure out how to defend myself like every day for a couple of months, pretty much. That part of the country is pretty intense with lots of dogs running around. So yeah, it was a lot of challenges.
And that kind of segues into my next question is, obviously you're solo and you're female and young. Did you have fears?
I mean, I feel like it's not that I'm not afraid. It's just that I don't let those things stop me.
Awesome.
And so, like I'm aware and I know that like I'm not naive. So I know that the world can be a dangerous place, but also I go through my life expecting good things and then they come to me. It's so cool.
Perfect.
So,
yeah. That's awesome. And you mentioned, meeting a lot of great people through the Warm Showers website or app, but how about just, it's always fun when you're loaded down on your bike, people are curious, like, where are you going? What are you doing? So what was that like?
Oh, I had people like giving me burritos and like water, like super, super nice people just out of nowhere, or inviting me to come stay with us. Come stay with us. I did that a few times and went off route when I felt, I trust my instincts. So if somebody seems to be nice and I don't get any alarm bells and stuff, then I said yes a lot of times. And I also ended up sleeping at a lot of churches, police stations, and fire stations. They're always very kind to a random cyclist coming through.
And you told us at the beginning that you did have a route. Did you ever get lost? You mentioned you go off route occasionally, but did you ever get lost?
Certainly. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, you're right.
Going down the California coast, I didn't. I basically just rode down the California coast, and I wasn't using maps. I was looking at my phone sometimes, looking at Google Maps. I got myself lost a couple of times doing that. And I also got really lost in Phoenix. I could not find my way out of this subdivision. And I passed there was this cactus that had like Christmas lights hung on it. And like the third time I passed it, I was like, oh my God, it's Groundhog Day. I'm never going to get out of Phoenix.
Oh my.
But I did.
I think it's sometimes a hard question to answer, but you're new life was basically getting on your bike and riding it and going to the next spot and then camping and then getting on your bike. It's like a repeat. How did you adjust back to, I want to say normal life, but that's not really true because you were at a crossroad anyway in your life. But how did you go from all I have to do is ride my bike to now like, oh man, I think I have to be an adult and do adult things again?
Well, yeah, I really do love the routine that you get into. Like you said it perfectly. It's really nice. Your only job is to like stay alive until you get some food and find a place to sleep. It's really cool. And yeah, I did definitely have to adjust. I felt for the first like couple of weeks after I stopped, I felt like so weird about being in the same place and like not moving. And I didn't want to be inside at all. I was like just going and sitting outside. Like, I just wanted to be outside because I was outside so much. But then, yeah, I gave myself a crash course in both adulting and culture shock by immediately diving into bureaucracy in the States and then moving to Italy. So it was a really long adjustment period in general also.
But I mean, how many people can say that? Like, and then I moved to Italy.
I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So head first to also becoming an English as a second language teacher and learning Italian.
Oh, wow. Are you teaching young students or adults?
Both.
Oh.
Every age. Yeah, all ages.
Excellent. That's cool. A quick interruption to tell you this week's sponsor is Thirsty Pigs, a full-service mobile event company offering beer, wine, spirits, plus catering for any indoor or outdoor event. Check out more at thirstypigs.com. Now back to the show. And have you done any bike touring in Italy yet?
Yes. I mean, ever since I've been coming here, I've always done bike tours, also working and voyaging. But after the lockdown finished here in June 3rd, because we had a very intense lockdown, like not leaving our houses for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
So I spent part of that planning a bike tour. And so the very, very first day that we could leave not only our towns, but our regions, I got on my bicycle and rode for 18 days down to the very tip of southern Tuscany on my own.
And then did you ride back too?
I didn't have time because I had to do more bureaucracy stuff. So I took the train back. I took the train back.
Well, where are you at with the book so far?
So while I've been doing all of this, learning Italian and becoming an English teacher and everything else and translator, I have also polished the book. So it is now to the point where I'm about to send it out to editors and agents.
Excellent.
And try to get it out to a bigger audience. And I'm also doing kind of like a self-marketing campaign. So an hour at least a day on social media and trying to do things like podcasts and blogging and anything that I can to kind of get the word out there as well.
And if people want to actually track you down, or I don't know if you're at the point where people can read excerpts, how can they look for you?
They can find me on Instagram at _Sylva_lining. Everything is the Sylva lining. So the blog is www.thesylvalining.com.
Okay.
And Facebook is also at the Sylva Lining. So basically search for the Sylva Lining.
Very good. Any adventures going forward? I guess if the touring company gets back in action, you'll be doing that. But do you have any like in your heart, like I got to do this next?
Well, we still have a lot of restrictions over here. We're much more restricted than a lot of places. Right now, starting a few days ago now, we can leave our towns again. So it kind of depends what happens, but I would really love to ride from here to Spain. Because I have a lot of friends in Spain and I've never been there. I'm always waiting on a kind of residence permit too, which until I have it in my hands, I cannot leave Italy. So it's complicated, but if not, then I'll go ride around Italy some more.
There you go.
Because that won't suck.
There you go. Off the top of your head, do you have any do's and or don'ts when it comes to touring?
Oh, I would say do definitely carry an extra tire. Because I didn't, but I got around it. Or if you're in the States, sign up for Amazon Prime. And then you can mail stuff ahead of you. That's what I did with several bike parts that I needed and a water filter.
Very good idea.
And then you just ask your warm shower host or whoever, hey, can I mail you this tire or whatever? That was incredibly helpful.
Very smart.
And in a pinch, if you get a flat and you don't have your tire yet, you can always use duct tape and an old student ID inside. Patch that thing right up.
Very good. That's awesome.
And don't be afraid. If you're a single woman, don't be afraid to go.
Yeah, I think that's a super smart advice. Like, why not?
Yeah. Just do it. The more ladies we get out there on our own or even in packs, the better.
Yeah. And that's actually my next question was going to be, if somebody has the dream, like, I want to do this, I want to go on a bike tour, would you say anything beyond just go do it?
I mean, learn how to, get in shape a little bit first. Like, don't just start cold turkey like this wonderful girl that I met on the trip who then had a knee problem quite quickly. So do some training ahead of time. Learn how to do some route finding maybe ahead of time. That would be helpful. And start accumulating maybe some lightweight gear if you care about, weight stuff. And realize that sometimes as a girl you will have some experiences that are not super pleasant, of guys asking you things you don't want to be asked, or asking you, why did your husband let you go on this trip? Things like that. But that could happen anywhere in the world. It could happen on the bus.
Sure. Yeah.
Guys can be horrible to you on the bus or on the side of the road. So you might as well go on a bike tour.
Yeah.
If they're going to be like that.
That's true. And you're getting exercise. You're getting, for me, mental fitness, I guess you could call it, where you're just like, you are in control of the machine that you are pedaling, plus you're in control of where you go and what you do.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a really beautiful, intimate way to see where you're going through, because you're totally immersed in it, like, for better or worse.
Yeah.
If you go past a factory that smells awful, you smell that. But you're also like under the sunshine. You notice all sorts of things you wouldn't have seen. I really got to know America better. Like, for me, it was kind of like a parting gift almost, because I really got to know America a lot better and appreciate it a lot more before I said goodbye to it for a while.
Yeah, well said. Do you have a title yet for your book?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I do. It's called Finding the Sylva Lining.
Very cool, yeah.
And then the subtitle is Through My Mind and My Country on a Bike.
Oh, awesome. So if people want to check you out before they can buy this book, basically you mentioned pretty much all the social media sites. Go search The Sylva Lining.
The Sylva Lining, Sylva with a Y, Sylva.
Great, awesome.
I on the blog, I will be, I'm trying to get people to sign up for it, because I'll be posting some updates on the progress and the link to this podcast and other things that I managed to do, and maybe some excerpts and things like that as well.
Great.
So.
And yeah, when you people are listening to this podcast, they can look at the show notes and find all of your different social media sites and where they can go and find stuff. Yeah. So anything else you want to plug before we end?
Oh man, I don't know. I just I hope that this inspires some people to go out and and bike tour A for one, or even just do something that they maybe wouldn't have considered they'd been able to do before. And if they do, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
Because hearing about other people's adventures and inspiring and empowering each other is what I think is part of why I felt like I had to do this ride and write this book.
Awesome. Well, I am definitely looking forward to the finished product, which,
Thanks.
yeah, hopefully
it might end up self-published even if I can get enough interest. I have no idea.
Oh,
This is like the next adventure. The bike tour was like the easy part.
Yeah. Oh, well, Sylva, thank you so much for coming to us from Italy and talking about your book and your adventures. And we really, or at least I look forward to following you on social media.
Con piacere, like they say, with pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
It was my pleasure.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks, Sylva, for sharing your story. Wow, a 4,000-mile bike tour across the U.S. is an epic accomplishment that many people only dream about. Her book is called Finding the Sylva Lining, and you can learn more about it on her website, which is www.thesylvalining.com. I'll list all of her social media links in the show notes. If you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting, email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. Please visit my Instagram page for daily entertainment and check out the Murphology YouTube page to find videos of some of the places I go. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from F.M. Alexander. People do not decide their future, they decide their habits, and it's their habits that decide their future. Think about it.